Hi there, how you doing? I'm still sick, so this is going to be an interesting experiment. If I cough too much, I may have to scrap it. But I did promise to talk about Teenage Ninja Turtles, Mutant Ninja Turtles specifically, the role-playing game. So that's what we're talking about. Won't that be nice? So, as I mentioned previously, this role-playing game came out in the 80s, around the time of the comic. Now, it's important that the timing was that. The comic was originally sort of a parody of Frank Miller works, honestly, and his sensibilities involving sort of Japanese cultural elements in his stories. Specifically, Daredevil and Ronin were big influences on it. And you can actually sort of see it in its look as well. Now, with those elements intact, the comic went for sort of a darker tone because Frank Miller had a darker tone, but it had a certain sense of humor with it as well. I was a fan of the comic. I thought the comic was, when I was a kid, I thought it was awesome. I had not actually read a lot of the Frank Miller stuff that it was based on at that point, so I didn't get the parody element. I just thought, here's a silly concept that they're treating seriously, and it comes off sounding cool. So, I like the comic. This is before the cartoon, and all of that. Before the movies, just the comic. With that in mind, these are based on the comic. A darker tone with a little bit of humor in it. Now, enough humor to make it not super dark. Just sort of, this happens at night, there are ninjas, death happens kind of stuff, but not, oh, woe is me, the world is terrible, go read some Daredevil and then slit your wrists. This is much more, adventure dark, I guess is a term that I just invented right now. So this is adventure dark. The premise is to exist in this world. This world with mutant animals who, apparently, learn martial arts through various means. Now, it would be tempting to play just the turtles. They give the stats for the turtles in here. And I assume that, at least on some level, there's the assumption that you would play the turtles. But, it's not really how you use this. You would make your own mutant animals. You would pick an animal, and they had a system where you could, each animal had a certain number of bio-E, which is a point that you would spend to get different sort of humanoid aspects to that animal. And also to, get some natural powers, like natural armor or claws or something like that. It was neat. It's, and they had lots of different animals, even in the main book, that you could choose from. You could be a squirrel, or there's even a Wolverine in here, and rats and turtles, of course, armadillos, that kind of thing. And you could make a character that was this mutant animal that had been transformed into a human. Golden. The system was not burdened down with the weirdness of mega damage at that point that Palladium later added with Rifts. So it was a little more balanced. It's still clunky, don't get me wrong. Character creation takes a long time. They use a percentage scale for your skill checks, which is easy to understand, but it takes a long time, and there's a lot of interdependent skills that influence stats and so on. So it's clunky to make a character. It's not an easy system to make a character. But the actual gameplay was relatively smooth. Not super smooth, but relatively smooth. Like D&D 2nd Edition smooth. And it wasn't so out of balance when you have, giant robots walking around with, naked savages. So, that said, the system didn't get in the way, is what I'm saying. The system didn't get in the way of having fun. The system actually worked relatively well for the setting. They released a lot of books, and really they should, because it's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. There's a reason why it became very successful. This was a sort of generic fill-in-the-gap rulebook for lots of different things. It gave some examples into play, some air and space combat rules. I mean, it gave a bunch of really random stuff. It also included another comic. The first book had an origin story and a standalone story by the original creators of the comic. This one also has a standalone story for the comic. And it is much more space opera-y, I guess, is the best way to put it. There's a lot more space opera elements. This and a couple of other books, you could actually run a fairly decent space opera in this system. Honestly, there was Mutants in Space, and this, and you could actually run a fairly decent space opera game. It talked about some of the aliens that show up in the comic, the race that Kang comes from, the little brain with the tentacles. They're in here. The TCRI aliens, which stands for Techno Cosmic Research Institute. It's the name of the group that made the slime that made the turtles in the first place. It's got them in here. It's got the Triceratons, which was a race of humanoid Triceratopses. It's sort of a warlike race. They're pretty cool. Some stats on a human federation out in space. A couple of other races. It's neat. Then we have this, which is actually not a bad little adventure manual. It's interesting because there's some great art in here, and there's another standalone story, but there's all the. I don't know if I can get it close enough for people to see it. The print quality on the lettering is not awesome. I don't know why. It's different in here. Maybe this is an earlier printing edition. I don't know. But the print quality isn't great in here. But there's some decent little adventures that you can run. That would challenge your mutant animals. This is basically an adventure source book kind of thing with a nice little story in it also. It seemed to happen a lot in these. This was their first attempt at an alternate setting. Now, after the bomb happens to be sort of a post-apocalyptic thing. And actually, Rifts later sort of tied this into it. But this is more close, I guess, to the bomb part, and a little less of the giant mechs roaming the countryside part. But the idea is that everybody in here, the only thing left, appears to be mutant animals or, very few corrupt humans, the Empire of Humanity, and so on. But, yeah, this is a much more sort of an attempt at a gritty post-apocalyptic setting using the same rules and the same premise that you're playing mutant animals in this world. When you run into humans, they're the bad guys usually. And yeah, we've got Road Hogs here. Now, Road Hogs is sort of, well, how to put this? More post-apocalyptic, except with sort of a road warrior feel to it. It also includes another standalone comic in here. So, again, you're ending up with some decent material. They include some, NPCs, some optional rules for vehicle damage, more equipment, and more animals that you can get changed into. But yeah, it's more of a road warrior type thing. And this also falls in the same line, Mutants Down Under, very similar sort of setup, and adds more animals, and this is again sort of the post-apocalyptic setting, but with animals in Australia. Now, you could totally take any of these animals and put them in a modern day setting too, but yeah, this is more intended for the After the Bomb setting. So you got several books for the After the Bomb setting. Mutants in Avalon, which is both a RIS book and a After the Bomb book, and it's about what happens to England, where you can you can use a lot of the elements in here in your RIS campaign, but more importantly, this is for another one, After the Bomb, what happens to England after the bomb, and the mutant animals that you find there. This is Turtles Goes to Hollywood. Yeah! And this one is more adventures, really. More encounters and the like. It's basically a campaign. And it's designed to be run as, the mutants go to Hollywood and go on an adventure in Hollywood. This is more modern day. This is not part of the After the Bomb series. This is another one of those modern day adventure packs. And I've got this. This is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Transdimensional. Now, this also sort of expands on the world some. It talks about time magic. There's some adventures in here. It expands the equipment. It expands. It gives you a couple of different magic options. Those of you who've read the comics, the turtles go a little bit of dimension hopping at a couple of the points, including running into a mutant aardvark named Cerebus, which, if you're a comic nerd, you know what that is. And it's got stats for some prehistoric animals and turning them into mutant animals. And, like dinosaurs and mastodons. And so there's human psychics. There's a lot of random sort of, we didn't know where to toss everything in here, so this got a lot of it, including the rules for doing the dimension hopping adventures and time travel and so on. That is Transdimensional, or that is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles role-playing game. It is well loved by a lot of people. I am not alone in this. I know when I talked about it before, I got a lot of messages from people saying, yeah, I love that game. It is based on Palladium's base system, which is sort of an alteration of D&D's base system. And it's delightfully gonzo. I like gonzo games where you get the sort of strange things that come out of it. When you're talking about anthropomorphic animals as your player characters, it's going to be a little weird. There's no way around it. A couple of books that I would recommend that you get if you plan on running this to make your game a little more interesting. Ninjas and Super Spies and its supplement Mystic China. They expand your list of martial arts choices, so you're not just playing ninjas, you have a bunch of different idea options there. And their write-ups on the martial arts are actually rather interesting. Their rules are a little clunky, but the write-ups on them, they did a lot of research, especially on Mystic China, to look up a lot of these martial arts, some of which they made up, honestly. But some of them are actual real martial arts that exist in the world, and it was interesting to see them try and reflect those. But it expands your options, but it doesn't overpower anything. So that would be my suggestion on a couple of books to get to go along with this. Along the same lines, if you're interested in adding maybe a horror element, you could pick up Beyond the Supernatural. The thing you probably want to avoid, and I may get some hate for this, is Rifts. I love Rifts. I love the setting of Rifts. Once you start adding mega damage in to the mix, the system falls apart. The system is not great. It's already sort of clunky, but once you start adding mega damage into the mix, it's really a pain in the ass. And it's just not worth it to try and rejigger the scale and what have you. And most of these rules were written before Rifts came out, and they just sort of plugged them in rather than created from the bottom up. So that's my suggestion on that. The suggestion I would make on running it is, if it's silly, run with it. That's not to say don't turn it into a pure comedy game. But, if somebody says, I want to play a hamster, master of firearms, let them. If you want a guy who wants to be, I'm a gecko who practices magic, let them. It's best, the game is best when it's a little bit strange and gonzo. But I've always loved the game. I know it's not universally loved, but a lot of people do, and there's a good reason. Things began to go downhill for them after the cartoon, because the cartoon was super, super silly and very kiddified, and it lost something in that translation. There was a dark edge to what the original comic had, and the kids show just didn't have it. The first movie had a little bit of it, but not much. I'm not going to lie and say I didn't enjoy the second movie, because I did, but I was young and stupid. But the first movie actually reflected some of the stuff that they got straight out of the comics. But, the cartoons got really, really super kiddified and silly, and this, sort of overhyping the love of pizza, and Michelangelo's kind of a doofus, and the comics weren't quite like that. It's like they took the sort of comical elements of each of the characters and amplified them. And because of that, the line sort of died out after the cartoon gained popularity. Which is a shame, because it was a fun game line. But you can find them in most used bookstores. I can't count the number of times I've been in a used bookstore and said, well, there's all the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle stuff, and so on. I suppose I should comment on the movie. I understand that people had fun watching it. I am not going to reward Michael Bay anymore. I'm just not going to watch any of his films anymore. Unless he's making like an original IP or something, I might check those out. But I'm tired of him messing up Transformers. And none of the previews to the movie make me really love it. And the thing I loved about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was the comic. And that tone and that very specific kind of mix that made for an interesting story. And I don't think Michael Bay is capable of doing that. So I didn't go see it. I have a limited amount of money to begin with, and I don't want to waste it on Michael Bay. But I will waste it on these. There are some books I still don't have right now. I don't have Mutants in the Yucatan, and I thought I had Mutants in Orbit, but it appears maybe I don't. And a couple other things. But I've got most of the collection, and I will probably dig up the rest eventually. It's one of those odd little things I collect when I get a chance because I love the game so much. I haven't played it in years, and I would play it today if I could find a group. I would totally play it today if I could find a group. But, I have them around. They're handy. They're ready for when I do find that group that's willing to play. Maybe I'll go to Gen Con next year and I'll run a game. Who knows? Beyond that, I will go ahead and mention this at the end of the episode because this is not the purpose of the episode. But this came today. And this came today. So, I'm going to be reading these, and I'll give you my impressions of these books when I'll give you my impression of these books when I'm done reading them. There's a lot to go through here, and so I'm going to work my way through it before I make any, this is awesome, or so far it looks awesome, though, so there's that. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. Subscribe, like, share with all the people, and let me know. Have you checked out Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? If you have, what was your experience with it? Do you know anybody that's currently running a game? Hey, can I come play? No? Okay. I'll talk to you later. Bye.